Hello, hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going fine. How have you been?
Not too bad. Busy, but not too bad.
And this is the 5th episode of Biweekly podcast with the host Dima Malenko. It's you.
It's here. And Vyacheslav Rudnitsky.
Yep,
that's you.
That's me. And before we jump into our next topic, I have a short follow-up to episode 2, I guess. That
all right, yeah, let's
was
go.
About the death of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
As I was preparing for another common Aspen seminar, I was reading one of the texts which very strongly reminded me your position about this expert thing and crowds of people who are shallow or not very, let's say, competent in a specific area, but they would like to share their opinions. And the text was named, it's really hard because I was reading in Ukrainian, Jose Ortega y Gasset, The Rebellion of Mass, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've heard about this one.
So I could literally pick like paragraphs of text that were saying exactly what you were saying. I thought, that rings the bell.
Well, I guess that may be because it's just those masses now have a little bit more ways to influence what's going on. But that probably goes to say, I think that this book is early 20th century or something like that. I guess it goes to say that people always, more or less always were like that.
Yeah, and I think there were some valid points and arguments there, and it's quite an interesting piece of reading. I believe that the author was the Spanish philosopher who was born in Madrid and then moved between Germany and Spain, seeing different sorts of working class people. And he's relatively modern, so he knows what tech and television does to people. I'm not sure that he got a glimpse of internet, but still quite an interesting piece of reading. And I wanted to link it with our previous episode.
And we will also put links to the author and to the book into our show notes, as always, and you can find them on biweeklycast.com.
But today our topic is actually different, and I would like to talk about the sense of fulfillment. I'm not sure whether you would like to talk about it, but you'll have to, because this is episode guided by me.
Right, and so in order for you to feel fulfilled, I'll do whatever. And I'm just joking. It's an interesting topic. Let's dive into it.
I bumped into a podcast about the feeling of arrival when you get the emotional condition or state that you feel satisfied with arriving where you are. And it kind of connected with our first episode about planning, because when you set goals, when you make those plans, at a certain point you feel satisfied or dissatisfied with them. And one of the reasons why you and I were practicing themes by Cortex system was because this feeling or sense of arrival is a bit different than in the standard goal setting system. So I picked 2 episodes of Focused Podcast to start up. But before, I think we should start with definitions.
May I start with a little story? It has almost no relation to what we're going to discuss, except for some coincidences, but I think it might be interesting. I would consider this maybe one of my first exposure to the world of English idioms and stuff like that. On my very first trip to the US, I was given a sat nav device. Like we didn't have smartphones at that time, and for navigation we used those dedicated smart nav devices. And a friend who lives in the US gave me this device. Like you can use this for a week, because somehow I didn't get it with the car rental, and whatnot. But he warned me that hey, this device is kind of funny in a way, because when you arrive at the destination, it says you have arrived. And he told me that he always smiles because in idiomatic English, it means that you have arrived means that you achieved success or everything you could desire in life. So yeah, that's just the title of the episode, "You Never Arrive," reminded me of this, because like according to that sat-nav device, you can technically arrive
once in a while. Yep. And speaking about the etymology of words, I think that the word achievement that we normally use when we speak about goals is not really directly connected or linked to emotional states. You wouldn't say like, I feel achieving or something like that. You use different terms. You say, I'm satisfied by achieving the goal, or I'm fulfilled. I have the sense of fulfillment. So there are different words. We never use the word achievement itself to describe or any forms of achieving as something to describe our state. But we use different words. And that's kind of tricky, because I think that fulfillment, achievement, satisfaction are closely connected.
Mm-hmm.
The same way as not achieving is related to dissatisfaction, frustration, and many other emotional states. But the correlation or root cause dependency is really interesting.
All right. Yep. Let's unwrap that. Let's unwrap that. And you suggested we start with definitions.
Since my main focus would be on the sense of fulfillment, I would ask you with your own words to explain like what this word means to you when you say like, I'm fulfilled.
I think it would sound like a joke, but maybe that we can start from it. So the sense of fulfillment is a feeling that you feel when you accomplished something.
Accomplished something. What if it's something you didn't really want to accomplish? Like you arrived to the destination where you didn't really want to go. Would you still feel sense of fulfillment?
Well, I guess probably not. I guess that's a great distinction. Probably that is connected to like my own goals, and only for my own goals or things that I planned I can fulfill. Because in this situation, I guess I would characterize my feelings. I would feel maybe relieved a little bit that I can now settle a little bit and then think about the future and whatnot. But definitely I will not feel accomplished if I arrive somewhere where I didn't want to go, or where I was forced to go kind of against my will.
So according to Oxford Dictionaries, fulfillment means the achievement of something desired, promised, or predicted. But I decided to think a bit more about it. And all these desired, promised, and predicted is kind of united for me by the word expected. So for some reasons, you expect this sort of results. You have certain expectations about, I don't know, results, activities, outcomes, or something. And when the reality meets your expectations about something, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted or expected this to be. And you feel this sense of fulfillment, I guess, especially when it's related to to the results of your own activities, plans, or work.
Yep, that kind of makes sense. That's a very good way to put it. You set an expectation for yourself, both in terms of something that is a moment in the future, and there is some kind of threshold, I guess, associated with that, where you can say that, hey, oh, indeed, it crossed the threshold, I have achieved, or something like that.
And I think that this is one of the areas which we probably should discuss, because this sense of achievement or fulfillment, I can say that I experience quite rarely. Like, comparing to the number of goals I set and the tasks I do and everything else, I can't really say that I'm regularly content or satisfied or fulfilled. I'm thrilled, excited. There are many other states that I feel about work I'm doing, but only on very rare occasions. Usually it's some kind of huge retrospective for 6 months, or yearly annual report for the board or something like that, I can get into this sense of fulfillment. But I think that it's not necessarily, it shouldn't be that way. And for me personally, it's always been a challenge to praise people or to give supportive feedback to people after they've achieved some minor things, because they seemed minor to me. And achieving a mini goal doesn't bring enough satisfaction or fulfillment. And with time, it kind of progressed. And I feel that maybe this is not the best way to approach it. That's why I started digging into this topic and landed on this You Never Arrive episode.
That's interesting. I would say I feel the same way. Maybe even worse in a certain sense. I at some point in time in the past, I noticed that it is, as I think it's described in this, they discussed this in You Never Arrive episode, that when you have this expectation, anticipation for something to happen, you are very thrilled, and they somehow connected this to dopamine and other hormones. But then when you actually achieve something, when you kind of arrive, you feel empty, right? In a sense. And I definitely felt like that. And I think with time, that kind of feeling of emptiness after arriving or after achieving something kind of prompted me to not be too excited or not to want things too much, just to avoid that feeling of emptiness. But that the other side of this would be that I don't really feel as much joy when I achieve something, which I would agree is not a great thing.
Moreover, given our culture, we tend to set new goals very fast. Like, we don't actually stop after achieving something to reflect on it, to celebrate it. We've closed the sprint, we start the next sprint, and it basically goes continuously on and on and on. And upon arriving somewhere, we already have something better in the future perspective, and we start thinking about it. And one of the terms that I've discovered for myself in this first episode, You Never Arrive, was the term arrival fallacy. I know that you and I are keen on different fallacies, and I think this is
our speciality, I guess.
Quite a specific one. And in the definition, it's an illusion when somebody feels that only when you arrive or when you make something happen, when you reach your destination, you will feel this lasting happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Something that will make you happy for a really, really long time, like buying a car or launching a product or finally fixing all the bugs or releasing the 100th episode of podcast or something like that. And the key word was the illusion, because in fact, this lasting happiness doesn't happen very often.
Right. We kind of tend to expect a shift, right, in level of happiness of whatever it is with this arrival, but it does not happen like that. You just don't go to that next level, because in the big scheme of things, I guess things did not change too much for this tectonic shift to happen.
And funny thing that I kind of experience this in my daily life very, very often. For example, motorcycle riding.
Mm-hmm.
The journey is much better than the destination, because you enjoy the process, the way, you really like the flow. Sometimes you even don't want to arrive too soon, because then it will end. And the happiness is in the process. Playing the guitar is very similar, or learning to play something. It is a lot of fun. Like, you discover some new patterns, you learn some new gestures, and the procedure is cool. And then when you finally learn how to play, let's say, the feelings, it's not the happiness from being able to play it finally, but the joy of learning it that actually makes the process worth. And on these out-of-work examples, I look really wise, like, I'm super smart, and like, you should enjoy the process, the journey is what brings pleasure. But then I come back to work, I look at the KPIs, goals, tasks, and everything that we use there as management frames, and I kind of lose this feeling, or it's not exactly the same. Maybe it doesn't have to be the same, but it doesn't work in the same way as I would like it to.
Right. Yeah. I think definitely it has this. I mean, our work has this element because we coordinate with other people. There are multiple things at stake. We have to plan forward and put those yardsticks to measure our achievement, and they're continuously in our eyes, and they are way ahead from where we are now, which makes us focused on that thing and doesn't allow us really to celebrate small successes that I would argue probably it would be possible to find every single day. It would be possible to find something, even as simple as didn't things didn't break, the world is still running, and isn't that a wonderful thing? A very profound thought that you're raising.
To me, it's even more because even in the way you explained it about little wins or small successes, it still feels different because I believe that the rival fallacy is actually about focusing at any sort of victory or success or even micro results. So it's not about the results. It's about the way that you can actually experience happiness in the process without achieving pretty much anything. Just enjoying the way you get there or the approach or the method. And I think that it's kind of counterintuitive in terms of the business culture that we work in, when our success is kind of measured not by how happy we are while doing our job, but by what we have achieved or what we have accomplished. The number of employees in your company, the revenue growth, number of products launched, user base, or whatever numbers are there. Nobody actually says like, are you happy doing your job?
But maybe they do a little bit, right? It's just that it's not at the forefront of what's being measured or what's being acted upon.
Because it turned to be that when I think about some people who work in crafts, these people who make, cups, clay cups, or something handmade, when you see that they're happy by doing this, I think this guy will be really good at what he's doing. But when I look at the engineer, I still think like, what have you built? Rather than, do you actually enjoy the process of coding? Or when I look at the manager, like, do you like checking your task managers?
I think it may be more multifaceted than this, because the people working in crafts, I guess that depending on their setup, the actual crafting is only part of what they're doing. So when they crafted those things that they are making, they need to go ahead and kind of, I guess, sell them to support themselves and their families. And while they're enjoying the crafting work, they may not enjoy the sales work as much. And even though by and large it would be part of their craftsmanship or day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month activities, they would not be enjoying or being happy about that part of work. Whereas for an engineer, that depends from person to person. Engineers in a, let's say, corporation, most of their time is spent actually engineering, and then, say, money automatically appear in their bank account. And maybe if a person really truly enjoys this engineering stuff, like building or understanding complex systems or finding bugs and disconnections in it, they may maybe feel more, let's put it this way, feel the joy of their craft more often than craftsmen who work as a standalone little small business.
Maybe in some abstract vacuum that would be the truth. But when we invite these guys for the performance review procedure to review their salary, we will ask them about the percentage of bugs, the number of lines of code, God forgive me, or some other KPIs that the company set to measure their productivity and their performance. And pretty much nobody cares whether they enjoy or didn't enjoy the process, except for challengers at the retention or exit interview when they ask you like, how did 2 years in Meta feel for you?
I didn't feel bad. Didn't feel bad at all. But I guess that I think maybe we can explore here a little bit the connection between the internal state and external kind of forces, because if those engineers are not asked if they are happy, that I guess does not preclude them actually being happy about the work they do, right? And enjoying. Like some people say that, hey, as engineers, like, yeah, we don't like working on bugs, and that's stupid. But actually, some of the bugs are really fun to work on, because when the bug is like this label doesn't fit this field, and you just go ahead and fix one width value in the template, yeah, that does not feel fulfilling, right? Doing that, but when you come across something, system does something weird in very peculiar circumstances, and no one understands why, and then you unravel the mystery and feel almost like Sherlock Holmes. That's completely different thing, but you also feel fixing a bug.
Fair enough. I thought about a metaphor that could explain like the direction I'd like to go, and I remembered a story my friend Alexei told me. I'm not really sure whether it was Chinese, some sort of Asian concept of labeling your activities, and there were basically 3 states. That there is the state of routine, like you do some sort of things. The state of war, the crisis when something happens and you have to accumulate all the energy and power. Let's say release day. Yeah, it's like you prepare for 2 weeks and then you push the product to production.
Right.
And the celebration when things go well and you're like, yay, like we did something. And then you come back to the routine. And the overall percentage is that the routine takes up to 90% of your time. Then the war takes another 8%, and then just 2% for celebration for some victories that happened along the way. And to me, this sense of fulfillment in terms of work has been very, very closely connected to the celebration episodes. Like when you actually look at the results, when you speak about the goals, when you do the retrospective. And what I realized after listening to this You Never Arrive episode, that maybe the sense of fulfillment and happiness should come from the routine as well, from the 90% of activities that you do, from your daily habits, from the meetings you run, from the way they happen, from the way everything is arranged and organized around it. It actually makes you happy.
Right. So it's like almost sounds, and I'm not sure if this was in the story, that you can kind of sort of schedule celebration moments throughout, not to tie them to intense warlike episodes, but just take time to reflect a little bit and celebrate what you've got at the moment.
So that's like the main area of thinking, and I'm not sure how to think about it, because for now sense of fulfillment is kind of coined to the level of achieving the goal. And while we were doing the retrospective on our OKRs for the past summer, let's say 3 months, I realized that if the goals are not achieved at least 70%, I feel that the work hasn't been done, even though there are so many factors, like there is a war out there, and there are many things that changing on the market. Our clients are in very turbulent times, and many things are changing and shifting right now. And not achieving the goals is not necessarily the bad thing, because we probably were doing something very important that just was not assigned as a goal back 3 months before we knew what was going to happen. And I think that this sense of satisfaction probably could come from an alternative way to see this, that it's not always meeting the expected results that you planned a year ago. And this is where I can connect it to themes, because in themes, you don't clearly define the final destination.
Right.
You define the direction, you move towards this direction, and theoretically, OKRs should be built in the same way. because they have this objective, which is the high-level vector, and then the key results. And technically, the key results shouldn't be as important as moving towards the objective. But the reflection system, the retrospective system that is built around the OKR system, is still very key result focused. Like, we check all the numbers, all the achievements, what has been done, what hasn't been done. And we don't talk about the philosophy of objectives that much. Like, how actually have we moved towards this? Do we still enjoy moving in this direction? Does it make our life better in any way?
Yeah, did we move our best foot forward, moving in that direction? Do we believe that this direction is important, and regardless of the difficulties and whatnot, we should continue going there? That makes a lot of sense to me. I guess I have two thoughts to pile on to this topic, and maybe one would be taking a little bit of a step back to this routine thing. I just realized that a bit of my routine now is regular working out. It sounds like highbrow and high key, but I either run or do my high intensity interval training workout for half an hour. But my goal there is to hit the activity rings on Apple Watch every day, and I kind of do that, and to me that's largely part of a routine. I then, when I come back from office or when I end my work day, I then decide what kind of thing I'm going to do to get to the necessary state of activity rings. And to me, this is part of a routine. I'm kind of happy the way it is, but I realized that Apple Watch still calls this thing an achievement. So if you have a perfect week, so for all 7 days you close all the rings, it is called an achievement, but it's based, at least to me, it's based on the routine. So I thought that might be like interesting connection or overlap between routine and sense of achievement.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, what sort of practices or habits could we actually implement to bring more joy and happiness from the entire process of doing your work, rather than purely focusing on the results? And whether it makes sense, or maybe this is the area where we should actually not care about happiness, and happiness is just overrated, and this is not the measure of why we come here. But then it feels kind of boring or sad. You should be really lucky to enjoy the process you're in, and if you're not, well, who cares?
I think we probably, to answer a very immediate question, I think we should care. I want to say that maybe there was some research showing that people who feel more happy or more joy about their work tend to achieve better results compared to people who do not. It may be like wishful thinking or kind of projecting my thoughts onto the outside world, but maybe if we or someone does the research in this direction, they may find some sort of evidence suggesting one way or the other. And from this perspective, I think we should probably care about this, even though I guess maybe not, if you look at this wider, outside of a context of a particular company, where the company may not care about happiness of the employees, and they can still hit their results or achievements that they want to get, in the context of the entire humanity, I guess it makes more sense to have more happy people, because like happier people can move us forward to better things, like, faster maybe. So I think it does make sense to care about this and find ways to do that.
And technically, there are many procedures that are supposed to help. Let's say regular one-to-ones. That's an activity that is originally designed to improve performance by checking in with the state, seeing what are the obstacles, what things could be improved, what can be done better, how things are going, etc., etc., etc. But the point here is that even when people apply to work, they put result-oriented as one of the best first qualities that they would like to describe themselves with. I'm result focused. Like I'm not. If somebody writes like I'm process oriented, that would kind of cause the suspicion. Like really? So you don't care about why you're doing this thing? And I think for me, it's not the same. A person can be really into something and not really focusing on the results in terms of the hard numbers or hard facts or achieving specific goals. Let me put it this way. Let's say our company has scheduled or planned or aimed at landing 5 new clients in terms of corporate English. We would like to open 5 amazing groups. But our sales manager focused and found a client that has launched 20 groups, which is about 8 times more than an average order. So it basically equals 8 clients of the standard size, but just one. And it doesn't meet the goal. It doesn't meet the sales plan. And technically, the task is not achieved, and the managers shouldn't be that happy because like our number is only 1 out of 5. But if you look at the overall direction, the sustainability of our company has improved, and improved even much better than getting 5 standard clients. We got like a balance. Right now, I just realized that maybe it's not just the number of clients that actually matters, but we should look into some other areas. Like, why do we need more clients? Because we would like to get more job done. We would like to get new projects. We would like to launch new experiments. We would like to get more workplace for Ukrainian teachers. And right now we would like to give them jobs that they need. And we've achieved all those things. But the idea that somewhere out there is sales plan or a goal of 5 new clients that is not achieved makes this salesperson feel, let's say, insecure, makes me concerned and worried, like whether should I reconsider every goal that I set every time we discuss it, because maybe it's not the same as it was before. So it is kind of confusing, and I can't find a procedure that would, as you like to say, start with why. Yeah, you would still remember why you're doing things, but not being over-fixated with some past decisions or past ways how we stated the goals.
Right. You definitely should find ways to be flexible, because otherwise it would not allow us to seize lucky opportunities that we come across, like in this particular case, right? It's the spirit of the goal to land 5 new clients was to increase revenue for the company or grow the company, whatever it means. That the spirit of the goal was that, and we just use this as a tool to give us a little more specific so that we can track how well we are doing towards the goal through the quarter or half a year or a year, and then using the letter of the goal to punish ourselves for going above and beyond, that does feel kind of stupid. So but it also brings an interesting conundrum, how like you said, like when there is enough flexibility in it, because on the other end of spectrum, you don't achieve any of the goals and you say, well, like maybe they were not as important. So like, let's think about retrospectively about another goal that would allow us to feel good. I think there must be some sort of a balance somewhere, but it's kind of not easy to strike it.
So what I see here is that maybe there could be a different method to explain the goals. Because currently, SMART methodology defines goals as specific, measurable, timed, like there should be a lot of restrictions and limitations. Otherwise, it's not a goal. We've been taught to consider goals only as SMART, because otherwise they don't exist. OKRs, in a similar way, key results should be basically SMARTs. Should be very numeric, very definite, very I'm not sure the word checkable exists, but something you could check.
Measurable.
Measurable, yeah. And attainable, of course. And when I think about our first tries with Sonar One, not in terms of Biweekly, but in terms of a bigger podcast network, and we were thinking about some success criteria, the idea was also about the number of shows, the number of listeners, the number of subscribers, the number of people in the chat, the number of engagements, and numbers. And I think with that approach, we wouldn't really last that long. Like, we wouldn't be recording the podcast for 6 years just aiming at those things, especially when things don't go according to your plan. When you hit the targets,
it's no brainer, right?
But still, like, do you actually feel happy and fulfilled in the process? That's the question.
Well, that's a big question. But would you say that, I guess, it would be too vague and too generic, but still, would you say that something like regular, like stopping for a little while and reflecting about what's going on, about your feelings, about those desires, things, and kind of evaluating and maybe adjusting what's going on based on that would be at least part of a solution for this problem?
I would say that it should be these sort of breaks that you're talking about, plus a mechanism that allows you to change the outcomes formulations when you see that they are not relevant and valid without much risk and tension and resistance from others. Let's say our sales team realizes a better strategy in the process and they say like, whoa, you see, we are still heading that way. We are just looking for bigger clients. There will be fewer, but the overall result for the company would be great. So let's go that direction. And we just remove that goal or ticket or KR and put another one there, stating something fresh and something new. And it doesn't mean that these guys failed or they're too changeable or something, because they're still moving in the right direction. And right now, I don't see that sort of flexibility in businesses, even though it's kind of claimed. While I was reading a book about OKRs, it was saying like, hey, yeah, it's super flexible. You can change it. In terms of crisis, you can move things really fast. But when I see the reality, and I've seen, let's say, 12 organizations using OKRs, about 100 plus organizations using SMART goals in goal setting, maybe it's some kind of Ukrainian culture or way to measure success. But based on the podcast that I've listened about perfectionism and you never arrive, it's pretty much similar in the Western countries, UK, the US, etc.
Yeah, I think so. And to me, I guess I would say that it maybe depends more on the particular situation or particular configuration in a company rather than kind of national Western versus Eastern thing. And what I mean by that is, I want to say that in some companies where they are, when they are more mature, they may recognize that, hey, this is a challenge. This is a worthy thing for us to pursue, to make sure that people who work for us are happy and they do not leave for other companies, because we would lose money recruiting and training and bringing up to speed new people. So they start paying more attention to that. And in that situation, the managers that they have and the procedures and processes that they have can include an element. All right, are we still tracking towards the goals we had? Would it be worth to maybe rethink or reevaluate the goals and adjust them based on what we've been able to achieve so far in this current period? But I guess by default, it's our nature that we set something and we kind of consider this as done, and we don't get back to it to change, because especially with the goals, it would maybe sometimes seen as a sign of weakness if you go to your goals too often and change them too often. It's like, oh man, what are you doing? Like, is this really a goal if you throw it out of the window at the first challenge you come across?
And one of the main conflicts that I experience here that I do this in many other domains, like reading a book. I started in the book 20 pages and I understand it's not my kind of thing, or it's not my cup of tea, or it's not for me right now. And I just stop and I take another book because that's not what I need. It's very easy. In terms of sports, like I come to 1 hour training. I said, no, I feel exhausted by 30 minutes. Can we just take it slower and finish in 40 minutes, not in 60 minutes? And it's totally fine because I see that 60 minutes wouldn't be beneficial for me. 40 minutes still will be, 60 won't. And I can adjust this in the process without feeling guilt, without feeling shame, without feeling that I haven't achieved something. But when I remove a goal from my task list or from our board with OKRs, I can't get rid of this feeling. And the challenge is how to get this flexibility that we have in some other areas. We've already grown up and gotten mature and realized that things don't always happen the way we foresee them, especially in the current world. You know, like when you were doing the agriculture in 1940s, things were pretty much predictable. You could get some percentage of risks, plus, minus, but still. Or like you were assembling cars in 1970s.
Right.
Like it was the procedure. You could plan and schedule 20% growth. You probably still can. But then new Tesla arrives and you have to reassign everything, start developing new technologies, move into a different direction, start investing into the infrastructure for the electric cars, and your entire industry gets disrupted in 2 years. And you could have an amazing strategy for 10 years forward, but does it make actually sense to move there now? And when I think about such longer perspectives, it makes a lot of sense. Like, yes, things change, you should change. That's adaptivity, that's flexibility, agile, and all the Scrum. But when it comes to mentality of a person, of a manager in daily work, I don't see the connection. And I think that this is something that we kind of have to build in right now to keep people sane.
Yes, so when you said that in the long term, in the bigger perspective, this makes sense, like changing the goals and whatnot. So then I guess maybe bringing bigger picture and longer term perspective into not necessarily daily thinking, but into more or less regular consideration can help with coping with this. And one other thing, or one other idea I had for this would be to kind of decouple measuring of progress from goals. So if we look at goals as a mere tool, not the measure, but the tool. This is what we set for ourselves, and kind of it's kind of an engine mode, right? We input parameters into an engine, and then engine performs, and then we measure how it performs. So we look at the overall progress that we've made. Say we increased our sales by 13%, we signed up 12 new clients, we lost 4 old clients, and something like that. Then this is what happened. Probably there would be good things that we can celebrate, and then that's it. And then we start looking at the goals. These were the goals that we set for ourselves. Were they helpful for our progress, or were they not helpful for this? And almost do kind of impassionate review of the goals as an instrument. I think that this thinking is a little bit inspired by kind of incident reviews that engineers all over the world and in different industries do. When they found, or we as engineers found, that it is more productive when something bad happens. It is more productive to focus on like how to prevent this thing without trying to find who's guilty and assigning the blame.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of procedure yields better results overall. And maybe something like that, some of this mindset we can apply maybe to goals and evaluate progress as one step of the process, and then look at the goals as a tool a bit separately.
While I was listening to you, I have 4 points to mention.
Right, cool. Let's see if you can make all 4 of them. Like me. You're a smart man.
Paper cuts it. So the first thing was related to the idea that maybe people who can see the longer perspective can feel better and rearrange their tasks and KPIs better. The issue here is that it requires strategic thinking. And in my personal belief, it's really hard to teach somebody strategic thinking if the person is not really open to it, because it's the thinking pattern. And you should be really interested to do that. And when I think about an average English teacher who is quite a process-oriented person, get this person into the strategic thinking for the company might be a challenge, especially if the person is not really motivated to get into this sort of expertise. Because, guys, I teach English. Like, I don't need goal-setting strategies for 10 years. That's not for me. This is not what I do. I'm not here to do this thing. And I think that engineers quite often do that when somebody comes with business goals and objectives to them. They say, no, that's not my job. I'm a middle developer. My task is to do my work, and that's what I do best. The next thing was about the pressure that you mentioned. And I think that there is some kind of, again, disbalance here, because nowadays in Ukraine, when there are a lot of blackouts and unpredictable electricity shortages, it's okay to reschedule a meeting, finally. Like, you can write someone a person without feeling ashamed that, like, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now because there are some unpredictable circumstances that came up. Like, I don't have any internet connection and electricity, so it's kind of hard to talk to you. Let's reschedule for tomorrow. And people are understanding. Like, when it happens to me, I feel more understanding. When I text someone, I also see that people feel much more compassionate and considerate here. And if we remove this context and just somebody asks to reschedule things, I already feel irritation and frustration. When somebody comes 10 minutes later to the meeting, I feel irritation and frustration before I actually think why it has happened and what caused this. Maybe it was for the greater good, but I will never know, because my basic assumption that it's disrespect or misorganization or something along those lines. And this is where this perfectionism hops in. And the next point I thought about was the deadlines, that the pressure that we set upon ourselves by setting very specific deadlines sometimes is also one of the reasons we feel this pressure. And let's say I would like to write an article. I set a deadline for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, I don't have an article because it's a creative process and it's really hard. And in this case, I really like what CGP Grey does with his videos. Like, he rearranged the model so he's not that linked to specific publishing dates, but still there are some limitations with his YouTube channel. And the idea here that maybe I need 4 weeks. And I wouldn't like to feel ashamed when I realize this. Like, when 2 weeks in, I understand that I need 1 extra week, and I can just edit it without feeling that I haven't failed. And the last one is that sometimes I see that there is a growing culture of accepting the mistakes. When people come and say, like, I didn't consider this is what happened. People feel much more understanding here. I think it's the tech companies that started this tendency, like Google with their policy of tolerance to mistakes. And if you are focused on solving them, if you know what to do, if you then you're fine. But on the other hand, when somebody doesn't achieve the goal, there is almost no tolerance here. If the CEO doesn't meet the quarterly goals, there is very little understanding towards this person, even though basically it's a mistake of assessment or forecasting. So I think that there is a conflict in here.
Right. And speaking to this like last point, as you were describing things, I thought that and the conflict is the very right word, because in any, maybe in most situations, or in many situations, we can come up with examples of how the thing that worked well in one case would work badly or kind of break things in some other case, like with setting, even with the setting goals themselves, right? We agree that in some situations, for some type of people, some kinds of goals, they work, but we cannot translate or extrapolate this to whole host of situations, because in other situations with other types of people or with other types of endeavors, setting very specific goals just might not work and make things even worse than not setting goals at all. I remember, for this, I'm 95% sure that there was a research that said that when developers or software engineers work on tasks without deadlines, this actually is the fastest method of getting something delivered, because they kind of did something along the lines of, they develop without deadlines, then very strict deadlines, less strict deadlines, and very lax deadlines, or something like that. So even with stricter deadlines, probably because of additional induced stress and whatnot, engineers were not performing as well as without deadlines. And on average, the delivery times for things without deadlines were faster than things even with strict deadlines. So there is a conflict, right? So the methods are not universally applicable, and it does make sense to find something that works in specific case, or at least make conscious attempt to find something that would work for a particular company, for particular team, or even a particular individual as well. And with individual, it's, I guess, kind of sort of individual's job to do that. It's not that Slava and Dima will come, or that hosts of the Focused podcast will come and tell you do this and you'll be successful. You will arrive. Yeah, probably it doesn't work this way.
I have a feeling that Agile was actually meant to resolve this issue. Like, the entire philosophy was kind of supposed to fix it, but then something went wrong. And we use nice methodology. We repeat the words flexibility quite often, but then somebody fails the deadline and we tell this person off or ask for a one-to-one and say like, 5 articles per year. Like, that's what you do. And the fact that you've published just 3, yes, they were amazing. Yes, they are on the cover of Wire magazine. Yes, but only 3.
That's tough.
So I think that there is, like, I know it's maybe the transition period that we are heading through right now. And as an entrepreneur, I've had this fear that if you stop monitoring things closely, if you basically remove those KPIs and strict goals and restrictions and stuff, you can lose the control. Because managers of the 70s, 60s, 80s were saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that is partially the truth. But I think that transparency is not the same as over-focus or over-concentration on delivering things the way they were described. And once again, I will quote CGP Grey from Cortex podcast when he refers to past himself as someone who actually didn't know what's going to happen. And whatever that person said 2 months ago, he didn't know stuff. And I'm here right now, I know stuff, so I'm not really responsible for unawareness of past me about things that are happening, but I'm here now and I'm aware, and let's talk about this.
Right. And I guess that's a very profound thought, like dividing this as a past me versus future me. And when here you set goals or something, you send a message to the future you, and it's his job to decide what to actually do with that. It's not his job to blindly follow the advice. I think another metaphor I can have for this is when you are driving somewhere in the area you don't really know, like you fully rely on the navigator that you have, and then it tells you go that way. Or like I've been in this situation. I was rushing to an airport to pick up someone, and of course, like I have very little knowledge of kind of London. I know the area where I live, so I can roughly go around without a navigator. But anything further, of course, I need a navigator to do that. And I was driving to airport, and the navigator tells me like on the next roundabout, take the third exit. And I'm trying to take the third exit, but it's closed because there was an accident, and this entire road is closed by police. I cannot just continue going through their barriers, right? I have to make a different decision, change the plan, and kind of reconsider. Like I exited the next available exit. Navigator recalculated the new route, and I continued going. It's like similar. I think it's similar thing. You should not. The goals are that kind of a navigator, and if you come across something that goes in conflict with those goals, it's just a signal from heavens that it's probably time to reconsider, or at least think about where we are going, and make a decision whether we should continue going that way.
And I think it also requires some certain level of maturity when you firstly schedule in advance extra time for driving, considering there might be accidents on the road. Then you don't actually punish yourself for not foreseeing that there is an accident on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And after things change, you're cool with that. So you thought about this. Yes, there is a chance something might not go according to the plan. Let's make another plan and focus on achieving things we have to achieve right now.
Well, that's a great thought. Again, and even if you are late to your destination, not punishing yourself for that, and maybe not let other people punish you for that, because you can say, hey, I'm only 20 minutes late. I could have been an hour late if things went even more wrong there.
And once again, I think that there is some sort of calculated risk that you could still put in. And if you didn't, that's an issue. And probably that's a reason to reconsider your planning approach overall, and maybe leave a bit earlier next time. That's like a lesson learned, and you paid a few $1,000s of ticket costs just to cover this lesson, but that's the way life goes.
Indeed.
Is there anything else you'd like to mention from the notes on the topic?
No, I think we're good. I think it was a great discussion, and the complex topics, and this seems to be a complex and multifaceted topic, always make for great discussion.
Would you like to spoiler the next one?
Yeah, I think we can try. I don't think it's going to be as much of a spoiler, because we are not going to discuss it, right? I think that the topic I have in mind for the next episode is kind of decision making, and in particular things that I think people refer to as structured decision making, like the tools and methods,
frameworks, models.
Yeah, stuff like that. We'll see how it goes.
We will, and hopefully you'll see too. And that should happen in 2 weeks. Hopefully, good weeks.
Right. Good weeks.